Welcome. This is Lost in Our 40s, a program by women for women where we talk about how to win, how to enjoy life, how to improve the standards at which we're living. I realize that each and every single one of my introductions are different, but that's okay. You are most welcome. Music by Atani Oyungu. Today, we're carrying on with the series we just started in the last episode, which was about the good girl at work. So again, the good girl is this concept of this teaching, this learning that we have within us as women. Not all women, but many women are taught how to be good. You need to be the good girl, and we are taught certain practices and ways of seeing ourselves and thinking about ourselves that tend to diminish us. So in this series, we're talking about how does that show up in the workplace? What does it look like? What can we expect? And today we're looking at how to say no at work. So the good girl and saying no at work. Welcome. Again, I'm painting again. I like this activity. So why do you need to say no at work? I have had the experience where I used to get a lot of, and this is not one of, for me, it had been very rampant. I believe that it was cultural, that in my culture, you don't say no to your boss. Whether or not that's true is another question, but it's a belief that I had. I did not feel that it was proper for me to say no when I've been requested to do something. So the thing with this is that burnout is a real thing. It is possible to be overextended at work. And it doesn't help then that you feel, in my case, the feeling that it is a cultural prerequisite, that this is something that culture has said you must do because the boss is always great. And I really wonder about it now that I think back about it. It's not, I'm Kenyan. I wouldn't really say that it is an African cultural requirement. In African culture, you respect your elders, but whether the boss gets into this elder position is questionable. I know that in Asian cultures, this is much more, well, I've heard that in Asian cultures, this is much more prevalent. This notion of the boss being the boss and they must be followed. They cannot be questioned. I use the example of, I'll sound very ignorant, but I've forgotten the country. I've forgotten the country, but they were running, their flights used to fall out of the sky very regularly, to the extent that it was questionable. It was a thing. How is it possible that this particular airline's flights keep falling out of the sky? Then they hired a foreign, I don't know if he was American or European, I'm not sure whether he was the MD, but either way, his role was to look at this and turn this airline around. And what he did is that he observed what was happening. And he realized that it was actually an issue of subordinates not culturally being allowed to query their bosses to the extent that flights were falling out of the sky. This is probably, I watched this on TV. I'm not sure whether it was, what do you call that? You know that documentary series about what went wrong with flights? I'm not sure if it was that or just some other documentary generally. But one particular example, because they're listening to the black box, the recording of the flight just before it went down. And you can see the co-pilot, I think that's what they're called. So the co-pilot, the second in command, has noticed that things are wrong. And he's trying to tell the pilot, but he's telling him in such a polite way, with such deference, that the end result is that the plane crashes. Not the end result of the deference. Well, yes, but the fact that this person was so held back by culture that they could not stand up and speak their mind, even while facing death, to the extent that they died, was something that was happening across the board. So it wasn't one person. When they say that, what is it? What is said? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's really it. That culture is so ingrained that it's something that you cannot just talk your way out of. So that was that finding and that experience. It was so mind-boggling, and it was particularly mind-boggling for the foreigner because they do not have this. They do not understand. If you're foreign to, and being foreign doesn't mean you're American or European. It just means that you are in a space that is not home to you. That is, so you're living within a culture that is not your own. So the things that they do may seem very strange. I live in Sweden. I bring this up. I live in Sweden where they eat pancakes on Thursdays. I don't understand it. It's okay. I find it very strange. They're not savory, they're sweet. So it's just eaten with meals. It's fine. So that's what I mean. It's a culture that exists that I don't understand. It doesn't make much sense to me, but it is a culture here, and the people here are very happy with it. So there you go. But then, so back to the flights. When he realized that this is what was going on, he realized that he needed to find a way to exercise this cultural requirement from the people, and it wasn't enough to just tell them stop. No, it needed to go much, much, much more deeply. So with that background, to explain why from my perspective, when I felt that I could not say no, this actually had come from partly culture fine, but mostly I would say from my good girl upbringing, because you only get stars when you're doing good. You only get stars when you're doing things right, and you're only doing things right if you're doing the things you've been told to do. So it is, I'm telling you all this to give this background of how, maybe I should start calling it indoctrination. I felt that was too heavy a word, but that's what really it is, because it is a set of beliefs that have been imposed on you without you ever noticing it, without your going out to seek it. It's not like you went to this church and said that you want to follow that faith. No, since you were born, these are things that have been thrust upon you, and without the benefit of your perspective, you are unable to provide a perspective because you are not aware that this is programming that is being input into your psyche. When I put it that way, I feel that it sounds very dark. It's not dark. I wouldn't call it dark, because this is what happens to all of us. It's not that there is a big bad person sitting in the background. That's not how I see it. There is no common agenda that has been set out by the aliens out there to try and create the good girl and make her small. No, it's a number of things that have come together to create that perspective. But anyway, after this super long introduction, going back to work. So the conversation we're having here is how to say no at work. So, like, as with many of these things, these things that we think, in my case anyway, that I thought were beyond me, as in I can't say no. First of all, I thought that I was being very good. I mean, good girl, that's what it means. I thought that in accepting every task that had come my way, I was doing precisely what I'm meant to do. And I felt good about myself, actually. I thought that this is doing everything is showing them. I'm not sure why I felt I had to show anyone anything, but well, maybe at work you feel that you need to show your worth. So you're in taking on all the tasks. I felt that I was doing what I'm meant to be doing. So regardless of how heavy, regardless of how ridiculous the timelines, regardless of whatever it was, I would always do anything that came my way. So fast forward to my change in perspective. It came about, I think the first thing that made me actively think about what I was doing. I was thinking about the workload. I would work well into the night, as in it's crazy hours as a practice, because I'll go into the because why, but I would do that. I would work well into the night. I'd always be, deadlines are never missed, and I'm not saying deadlines should be missed, but overextending myself. And what happened is that I became aware of burnout. I hadn't realized that that was a real thing. So when I did become aware that there's some, I watched um, people who had gone through the experience of burnout. And that gave me pause. That made me realize that there is a real health risk in overextending myself in the way I was. Back home, culturally, not culturally, my experience back home, I don't say culturally because culturally, I don't believe the African culture in and of itself had this capitalistic run to excel. That I believe the African culture was much more communal than that. We did not have the tasks of going to work, the 9 to 5. The living was much more communal, and everything was for the better of all. So I'm shying away from using the word culturally as such, but maybe it's a capitalistic culture that has set up within the African paradigm that you do now need, moving away from what was traditionally the case, you do now need to push yourself to do better than your neighbors and your friends and everyone around you to excel. That is the mindset, the mindset that now pushes. So from that mindset then was the feeling that I can't say no. If I'm given anything to do, I can't say no. I must do it. If it has been given to me, there is a good reason it has been given to me. Don't question it. Just say yes. Figure out how I shall do it. Figure out my work times. Figure out everything. So when I did notice burnout as a thing that happens, it gave me pause and realizing that this yes saying has an actual impact on my health. Then I stopped and looked at myself. Introspection, a very good thing to do, which is something that I hope to do often. As I often say, it's the noticing that for me I find the critical point, because when you notice something, it's very easy to go through life doing things without noticing that you're doing them and asking yourself why you're doing them. So when I noticed that, and this culture of working, I use the word culture too much. This action, this process, this habit of working is something I picked up from my very first job. I remember that I would go to work on weekends. I'd go to work on Saturdays. On my very first job, I was an intern. I was an intern who'd go to work on Saturdays to just work and work and work and work. Partly because I had nothing else to do. I think, if I have to be frank, that was work was my entertainment, perhaps. So in that time when I was an intern, it wasn't the job pushing me to do more. No, but I did develop the habit of working all the time. And this is what we want to consider. Let me go into the points now instead of rambling on. So the first thing I did when I started looking at it is to reconsider how I saw myself at work. I thought that I thought I was the cornerstone that the builders had rejected. I thought that the office would not work without me. Without me, I am the centerpiece. I hold everything together. And because I did, having my fingers in because I did, that's not true. But having my fingers in so many things and doing, and this is across my work life, not too much when I was an intern. Having my fingers in so many things and being so heavily involved, I did have a number of my managers at some point in time thinking that, or telling me that I was really, really critical to the team. And this again got to my head, because then I'm thinking, if I don't do this, who can? Who will? Once upon a time, to cut this long story short, I became aware of, there was, how many, I don't want to give too much detail so that people don't really understand what I'm talking about. So it was in Kenya, I can say that. There was a place where someone died. He was a manager and he had an accident on a Friday, a car accident. So nothing expected. He hadn't been ill or anything like that. He left work on the Friday and was involved in a tragic car accident and he died. His replacement was seated at his previous desk on Monday. Let that sink in. Died on Friday, replaced on Monday. That really got me reeling. But that really sent me on a spin. Because on that particular point, this person was rather senior and, again, one of those people who was holding everything together. And yet, the company was able to move on over a weekend, which told me partly that, they had perhaps already been thinking of getting rid of him. At least I hope so, because how then do you have someone at the ready to take on the reins within a weekend? Yeah, that I felt bad. I didn't know this person. I didn't know that I wasn't involved. I wasn't in any way engaged with that workplace, but I felt very bad, and this made me think. Me who thinks that I'm holding the reins of everything together, do you really think that the company will go down if you're not there? That became the question, and that then became my turning point, because I had to relook at how I am looking at myself, and I see that I have these 2 points here. Well, okay, I'll go on to them because I mentioned them already. One of them was thinking, are you? I thought that I was better than the rest. So there's something about me that was, and maybe it's true. I mean, it's not, it could have been true. I might have been better than everyone else at the time for whatever reason. And the point is to train them. Why, why die at the task? Why is it in keeping the glory for myself that I want to be the only one who can do it? Because if you train other people, surprise, surprise, they can then take some of the burden away from you, which is what I came to learn. And then because of this idea that I needed to keep my knowledge to myself, I came to learn was unhelpful in an organization. So moving away from just trying to better my own lot in life and thinking more globally to the better of the organization, then I moved to the perspective that let us share. I cannot learn if I'm not sharing. Is that true? I think it's true. How because you engage in conversations with people and you might learn that the things that you think are correct are wrong. So in engaging in conversations with different people, in engaging in different activities, is where you can learn and grow. And isn't that the goal? Isn't that what we all want to do, to learn and grow? So that was one thing. And the other bit was considering whether I was playing a certain role. So fitting myself into these shoes of, in that case, what role was I playing? In that, I'll pick up one job where I felt that I was the centerpiece, and maybe that's what I've just spoken about. The holder of all knowledge. Yeah, that's the one I've just spoken about, because in that one, what I did is I went to other people. But I'll give you the example of someone else who had taken on the role of a facilitator. She is the one who would make things happen. Whenever there was anything to be done, she was the one who would get it done. And the example I put here is Tigro, being the example of being the Tigro. But that's not really it. If you're the facilitator, you get things done. People then got used to her being the one who's taking care of certain aspects of things. And then she found herself tied into this role of, in a role that she did not actually want to play. So if you've taken up a particular role, if you're playing a role at work, you can stop it, you can change it, you can just decide that that is not the role you're going to play anymore. It's fine. You are allowed to reinvent yourself, and so long as you've made the decision to reinvent yourself, then the people just have to accept the new you. It's your life. You are at the center of your own life, so I don't feel that you must stick to something that you started off that didn't work out. Yeah. All right. Then, are you a workaholic? Aha. So I was a workaholic. As I mentioned, even in my first job, I would go to work on Saturdays, but because I didn't have anything else to do. So for me, it when I thought about it is when I realized that not so much that I didn't have things to do, but it was masking um, something else going on within me. There were issues within my life that I did not want to face, and I used work as the ready um, excuse to turn away from them, to do other things. So because of all the time working, then I did not actually have to spend time looking at these disturbing areas of my life. So it's important. It's good to look at it. It's easy to tell yourself that you're doing this because there's a lot of work to do. Granted, but it is also possible that, like any other workaholism, like any other kind of addiction, is something done to distract. Ding. Some of these truths are difficult, unfriendly to hear because we don't always think of them that way. Being a good girl, I mean, working hard is the very epitome of good girlness. So seeing the why, and I'm not saying that everyone who works a lot is a workaholic or that everyone has things that they're trying to run away from. I'm giving you my example and the fact that I needed to see this to be able to change and step away from potential burnout. Okay. I have here find an alternative pastime. That's funny. I find it funny because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who couldn't fathom how it is possible for me to find time in my day to do this, to create podcasts. And I thought, I mean, that they're not that long. They're the average is probably 20 minutes long. And I wondered, what do you mean you cannot find 20 minutes to do something that you enjoy? If you cannot find 20 minutes in your day to do something that you enjoy, that is, I'd say that's a red flag. That means that there's something about I don't know if it's the time. There's something wrong. I won't tell you what it is because I don't know you, but there's something that could be looked at. And yes, we are told that this life we have to be busy. There is no time. What is this life so full of care? We have no time to stand and stare. Yeah? So granted, that is one thing that we're taught. But the other thing, and I don't know if I have it here, is let me just go into that one, is the prioritization of activities. There is I forget the name. I just know he was Italian. This guy who discovered that the 80-20 rule. 80, if your wardrobe, you wear 20% of the things in your wardrobe. Is that a good example? 80-20. I'm losing the point. The example that I have is from the book by Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week. And the example he gives there is, he was talking about his company. He had just started a company. And he realized that 80% of his revenue was coming from 20% of his clients. And 80% of his problems were coming from, now I'm just losing this all. I keep just mixing it up. Either way, the vast majority of his problems were coming from the people who are spending the least amount of money. So in this 80-20 rule, the other thing that's discussed in that book is that work takes as much time as there is. So if you say that you're going to do something within 20 days, you shall do it within 20 days. If you say that you're going to do the same thing within an hour, believe it or not, you can do it within an hour. The example he gives was a work assignment, a school assignment that he had due. And it was a very serious assignment. And he just realized that he couldn't make it. Then he went to his teacher and asked for more time. And the teacher then gave him the challenge to just use the time that he has. And he came up with a wonderful grade, better work than he could have done if he had been, slaving over the task for hours on end. So all this to say that prioritizing time and prioritizing tasks can help with this overextension at work. It could be that you're spending, which was my example. I found there's a particular task I used to do that used to take me such a long time, and it was so simple. It was frankly something that could be done within 3 minutes that I used to do within 3 hours. So because I had the time, then I would extend it on. So having this critical conversation with what you're doing and how you're doing it is another way of figuring out the time. Because if you have time, if you or rather if you prioritize, we're talking about saying no, I forgot. If you prioritize the tasks that you have at hand, you'd be able to judge and juggle. When you have something new to do, how does that fit in? Are you able, if you give yourself X number of hours to work in a day, assuming it's a 9 to 5, if you're strict to that, or you want to give a little more time from home, however much time you want to do, how, first of all, having the strict timelines, there should be time for relaxation at the end of your day. So if you have that all set up, how would this new task fit in? How would you manage it? And this is a real conversation to have with yourself, because then you can gauge, you're measuring. You're not just putting a finger up in the air and saying, I think. No, you're looking at this is taking me this much amount of time. I then would need this amount of time to also take this on. With that in mind, I can calculate and figure out that if I take this new task, which of these other ones will I put aside? Or what kind of time frame would I need to be able to deliver? And these are things I wasn't taught at school. No one taught me this at school, because at school you had to just do all your work. You have assignments, they're due, you need to bring them in. So no one told me this thing that you can actually time manage. That's what it's called. So time management was not something I learned at school. And it's available. It's available. If it's something that interests you in more detail, I'm sure the internet is rife. I mean, I'm sure you can do a course, but I'm also sure that the internet is rife with people who can give wonderful advice and wonderful tools on how to do just that. So we don't have to die. That's a point I'm bringing out, because at some point I did feel that I had to die. I felt that I had to do everything and everything and everything, and sometimes even going over and above, volunteering. as if the things I was doing were not already heavy enough, then volunteering, because I'd been taught you need to be seen in a certain way, and I felt that people who volunteer are seen in the way that I wanted to be seen. So just taking on more and more and more, and it could be depending on where you are. You might have well, my experience has been that in a lot of the places where I have worked, people have been equally heavily burdened. So it's not that easy for someone to come and notice out of the blue that, wow, you're struggling, because there is that much to be done. So you need to figure out, you as the adult need to be able to figure out what you're doing and how it's affecting you. So time management is very useful. And then forming the words, no. The workplace is political. The world is political. Life is political. So sometimes you do need to be able to gauge how to push back when when you feel you need to push back. It's not. Burnout should never be the target, and I don't think that's the intention in most workplaces anyway. No one wants you to suffer under the yoke of too much work. I do think that employers do want to get the most out of you. I mean, it is what do you call it? Not a balance, but it's a job. The workplace is trying to get certain output, and however it can be maximized, that's capitalism. Then they would do whatever is needed to maximize it. But the expectation is not that you burning out does not help in the achievement of the goal. So that is not a positive, it is a negative. So it is in fact your duty to raise your hand and speak up if you do feel that you are if things are too much. And again, I don't say this to blame the people who have gone through burnout. Burnout must be really, really, really terrible. It's not something that I would wish on anyone, and I do not blame them. Sometimes it is the task, the workplace, the nature of what is going on that would see you pushing yourself to such an extent. Oftentimes we don't realize that we have pushed ourselves to such an extent without passing through some medical checkup to be told that, look, things are not as they should be. It might be difficult to realize this. So no, I do not blame anybody who has experienced burnout. In fact, my heart goes out to you if you have, and I wish you complete and full recovery. And I hope this can help you then to understand how to say no when needed, when necessary. Yeah. So how? Yes, that's where I was. How? Again, gauge the environment, gauge the mood, gauge the day. It is not wrong to balance things out and do things at a time that gets you the best possible outcome. That is how the world works. That's how everybody works. That's how people engage with people. So it is not necessarily throwing your tools down and shouting from the rooftops that you shall never work again. Not quite what I have in mind, but just angling it and finding respectful, always respectful, and assertive. So assertiveness is not brash or rash. It is taking up your space, taking up your power, and speaking from within. Yeah, with respect, with kindness, but with firmness. And if this is something that your present load doesn't allow you to take up, you can then provide, having done the task to understand the time frame of what you have now, you can try to prioritize the things that you have. Maybe there's something that is less important and you can bring this up instead, or you can then determine what time scale you will need, and then communicate this to whoever it is that needs to know, whoever it is that's expecting the output. And then that way you don't rush. You don't have to spend sleepless nights, as I did, trying to push and work against the clock. Because sometimes, as I said, it could be that you're putting in the time, but the quality of the output is no good. Yeah. So with that realization that these are things that do happen, yeah, then you're better placed to understand that it is important for you yourself for the task at hand, and for the organization. It is important for you to be able to speak your no when you need to. Let me see, did I have anything wrong? Yeah, saying no is not wrong. If your CEO had to say yes to everything, the company wouldn't be afloat. So it is coming out from this good girl perspective that everything must be yes, that in the African context or whatever, the Asian context or whatever other kind of context, one must always agree. If we come out of that, then we realize it is important for people to say no. You are a person, you are important. Then your no is valid when it comes up. Of course, we're not, in this case, I'm not talking about just being flippant. We are not just saying no because. We are saying no because we had previously been taught to always say yes, and we are now trying to figure out how to enter into this other paradigm where we feel that it is okay to speak our truth. That's the context from where this is coming from. Yeah. And they have one out. Zoom out and see your tasks in the grand scheme of things. Everything you do is important. I like this writer, Michael A. Singer. He writes that we are, in the grand scheme of things, you are seated or standing on a clump of earth. He calls it, I think, dirt. That's the planet Earth, that is suspended in the middle of nowhere and spinning on its own axis. And he's saying that look, no matter what it is that is disturbing you at any given time, in the grand scheme of things, if you want to fear saying no, imagine if the planet, well, not to give you things to be scared of, But you don't ask yourself why the planet is where it is, that it is spinning the way it is spinning. And yet it's in the middle of nowhere, just suspended, and it's going. If that doesn't worry you, then perhaps these are the things that we think are the end of the world really are not. So taking it from that perspective. I think those are the, did I have it? Let me just see very quickly if I had one that I jumped over. I'll say it. I said here, find an alternative pastime. So if you're the workaholic and work is what, in my case, when I was bored, if I was not working when I was an intern because I didn't know what else to do, find a hobby. Paint. Anything. Find something to do that engages you. Something that engages you from the inside. And then you wouldn't only have work to rely on. Yes. Thank you for your time. I always appreciate you spending time with me. I enjoy this. This is fun. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Music by Atemi Oyungu. Content and production by me, Shiro. Get in touch at lostinourforties.com.